Hello, today we're going to do problem number 1 of chapter 4, which is the cash budget. Let's open up a new Excel notebook. Here we go. So I wrote down some of the given information that we have. So we want 6 months of the cash budget from January to June. So we're going to write down the company name, Durango, um, like fours, the cash budget. And then we're working on, which is for the period of January to June 2021. Get this, center it over H. So there we go. Go here, there, there. Hit. And then we're going to write our months across. So we're going to put January, do this, roll, and we want until June. So there we go. And then right here, we're going to put our collection. So this is what we're collecting each month. Collection. And then we're going to put our payments. Okay, now that we have everything, we're going to put our beginning cash, which is our ending cash from December 31st of 2020. So let's write beginning cash here. And then that was 10,000 for January. There we go. And then in problem A, it says calculate the firm's expected ending cash balance for each month. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to put ending cash here. And then the way we want to do that, so it's easier to copy throughout everything, is we're going to put the collection. So we're going to put equals, that'll be B5. And then we're going to add that to B7. Go. And then we're going to subtract that from our payments. That'll give us this. And then for the following months, February through June, our ending cash will be our beginning cash. So our ending cash from January is going to be our beginning cash from February. So we're going to put equals, and then we're going to make that cell, and then from there, just copy it over. So these aren't inputted yet, so they're going to have a little dash saying that there's nothing there. But once we copy this over, same formula for all of them. There we go. We have our ending cash balance for each of the months. Now that we have this, we can move on to step B. Step B says, assuming the firm must maintain an ending cash balance of at least $12,000, how much must be borrowed during each month? The way we do that is put a column for borrowing, and then just so it's separated and a little bit nicer, you can put a notes column followed by the minimum cash balance. There we go. Okay, and for a minimum cash balance, we want that to equal that 12,000. Fix this really quick. And then for borrowing, we're going to use the if function. So that is going to be equals if our ending cash is less than our minimum cash. to stay that way when we copy it over. So we can do this, comma. This is if it's true, then we want our beginning cash, subtract that ending cash. Then we want our minimum cash to stay the same throughout it all, comma. And then if it is false, then it will be a 0. This gets us how much we need to borrow. And then, so that way all our numbers match up, we can change these cells, so our beginning cash, from just being B8 to be B8 plus B9. There we go, we got that 12,000 right there. We'll copy it over. So it's copied over. This is going to be our ending cash from last month plus our borrowing cash, which will equal 12,000 or more. So our borrowing, since we have this already inputted, we could just copy it over. Here, we could just change this so we could see the zeros. And right here, we can see that we're only going to need to borrow for the month of January and the month of February. And then after that, we are no longer going to need to borrow. So now that we have that, we're going to go down to the third part of this question. And it states, if the firm must pay 5% annual interest on its short-term borrowing, what are the ending cash balances for each month? Right here, we're going to add a row, insert a row right there, and just call it interest. And then that interest is based off of their short-term borrowing. So it's going to be what they're borrowing. It's going to be that B9. And then it's interest off of that. So that's going to be times, and it's 5% annual interest. So we got to make that into a month. So we're going to put that 5% divided by 12 months. We get 22. So with this, we can make a slight adjustment to our ending cash balance right here. And then that will be all we're going to do is we're going to subtract that interest from it. And there we go. And then with this interest, we can just copy it over all the months. And then right here with the ending cash, copy it over. And there we go. So we can see that the ending cash doesn't really change because the interest, we're not really borrowing much money. And we're able to pay it off fairly quick. All right, and now that we have this, we can move on to our next part, which is part D, which states, what are the ending cash balances if the firm uses any cash in excess of the minimum to pay off its short-term borrowing in each month? So with this, we're going to add a couple rows here. Here we go. First one is going to be cumulative borrowing. Second row will be that excess of cash. Cash. We'll start with excess of cash. It'll be an if function, so it's going to be equals if that B8, which is our ending cash, is greater than B14. Then we want B8 minus that B14. So we want these B14s to stay when we copy it. So we add this. So we want that B8 minus the B14 if it is true. And then if it is not, we're going to make it equal to 0. This pretty much says if our ending cash is greater than our minimum cash balance, our excess of cash will be here. And then let's copy this throughout the rest. There we go. So we haven't inputted anything for our cumulative borrowings, so there's nothing there. So our cumulative borrowing right here is going to be equal if so our cumulative borrowing here is going to be equals if B11 plus C9 so our cumulative borrowing here is going to say equals if B11 plus C9 is greater than 0, then we're going to want B11 plus C9 minus our excess of cash, which in this case is going to be C12. And then if false, we're going to want it to equal 0. Go, let's make sure we close those parentheses right there. There we go. And then our cumulative borrowing for the month of January is actually going to just be what we borrowed from before. So that's going to equal the cell. There we go. And then we can copy this over. There we go. So now we can make it a little nicer. So let's make these bold right there. Can fill it with a little bit of color so it pops out a little bit more. Here. And we can format first. Want the top and bottoms to be dark. Go. Inner borders of everything. We're just gonna want to fill it with this shorter line. There we go. And there we go. That is our cash budget. And just to fix these really quick, we can make it general so we see the zeros. It's a lot easier to see that way. So there we go. And the ending cash stays relatively the same until we have an excess. Thank you.